Hubby, I've prepared a wedding anniversary gift for you. My wife, Daniella, sent me a photo, a brand new sports car, with a strange young man standing beside it. Before I could reply, my phone vibrated again. It was a message from my assistant. President Chan, we've confirmed it. Madam bought a Porsche for an intern named Calvin. It cost 2.3 million and was paid from the company account. I stared at that glaring photo and dialed Daniella's number. My voice was calm. Nice car. Where's mine? On the other end of the line, Daniella's tone carried the familiar, condescending impatience. You're a grown man, can you stop being so materialistic? As long as a car can drive, that's enough. Don't keep comparing yourself to others. Chapter 1. Mr. Chan, are you sure you want this one? Beads of sweat formed on the sales manager's forehead as he cautiously confirmed again, as if afraid I might change my mind at any second. This Phantom, fully configured, is priced at 13.8 million at the moment. Our dealership only has this one unit available. I said nothing. I simply took a black card out of my suit's inner pocket and gently placed it on the table in front of him. Swipe it. And I have only one requirement. Please tell us. We'll make it happen no matter what. The sales manager bent forward instantly, almost bowing. I pointed toward the floor-to-ceiling window. Not far away, the Porsche that Daniella's so-called little brother, Calvin, had just driven off and was disappearing from view. I spoke flatly. I want to be driving this car, and arrive downstairs at my wife's company within 1 hour. No problem, Mr. Chan. I'll arrange everything immediately. I guarantee you'll be driving your new car within the hour. The sales manager looked as if he'd been granted a pardon. Clutching the card, he practically ran off. I sat alone in the VIP lounge. Outside the glass was the roaring city. 30 minutes ago, I had still been preparing for our 5th wedding anniversary. I had ended my overseas business trip early and hadn't even informed Daniella, just to give her a surprise. I deliberately came to this auto brand center she loved most, planning to pick up a limited edition sports car she had been talking about for ages. But what I waited for was not a surprise. It was a shock. I saw with my own eyes my wife, Daniella, holding the arm of a young man nearly 10 years younger than her, smiling radiantly as they stepped out of a brand new Porsche. I knew that man. He was a new intern at her company, named Calvin. Fair-skinned, sweet-talking. Daniella had praised him more than once in front of me, calling him smart and considerate. I was standing behind the floor-to-ceiling window on the 2nd floor. Before the anger in my chest could even ignite, it was drenched by a bucket of icy water. I heard the lobby manager downstairs speak respectfully to Daniella. Boss, are you satisfied with the car? Mr. Calvin really likes it, doesn't he? Daniella looked up at Calvin like a woman deeply in love. The affection and infatuation in her eyes were something I had never once received from her. As long as he likes it, that's all that matters. Calvin wrapped an arm around Daniella's waist and kissed her on the cheek. His voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough to reach me, the audience. Thank you, Daniella. You're so good to me. Silly boy. It's just a car. Your sister will get you something even better in the future. My assistant, Vale, stood behind me, barely daring to breathe. Expressionless, I watched the loving couple below, took out my phone, and sent my assistant a message. Find out who paid for that car. Less than 5 minutes later, Vale replied, President Chan, it's confirmed. Madam paid in full using the company's contingency fund account. 2.3 million. I looked at that line of text and suddenly laughed. The company contingency fund account, that was part of our shared marital assets. In fact, one could say every cent of profit that company made was soaked in my blood and sweat. For her sake, I had stepped back from the spotlight and willingly stayed behind the scenes, becoming the shadow beneath her halo as a successful female entrepreneur. I let her be the legal representative. I let her be the chairwoman. I let her speak eloquently in front of the media, basking in admiration and praise from everyone. I thought that was love. I thought that was fulfillment. Now it seemed I had merely built her a castle with my own hands, a castle where she could do whatever she pleased. And I was nothing more than the clown she kept inside it, ready to be discarded at any time. My phone vibrated. It was a photo from Daniella. In the picture, Calvin was sitting in the driver's seat of the Porsche, flashing AV sign at the camera, his smile bright and carefree. The caption read, Hubby, I've prepared a wedding anniversary gift for you. She couldn't even be bothered to come up with a different excuse. She directly used a gift meant for her lover as a way to brush me off. Right after that, her call came through. Hubby, did you see the photo I sent you? Do you like it? This is our 5th wedding anniversary gift, she said cheerfully, her voice even carrying a hint of flaunting pride. I walked to a corner of the lounge, lowered my voice, and tried to keep my tone sounding normal. Nice car. Where's mine? What's my gift? There was a brief pause on the other end. Then Daniella's tone turned impatient. James, what do you mean by that? I bought you such a great car and you're still not satisfied. You're a grown man. Can you stop being so materialistic? As long as a car can drive, that's enough. Don't always compare yourself to others. And besides, isn't your Toyota still running just fine? What's wrong with keeping a low profile? Do you really need to be so flashy? People will think we're ridiculously rich. Listening to her righteous scolding, I felt nothing but irony. That's right, I'd been driving that Toyota for 5 years. It was a wedding gift from my father back then. In those 5 years, for her, for this family, I had earned far more than 100 Toyotas. And what did I get in return? Her using our shared assets to buy a $2 million+ sports car for a pretty boy, then turning around and accusing me of being materialistic and competitive. Daniella, I interrupted her. Do you really think I'm that easy to fool? Silence filled the line. A few seconds later, she let out a cold laugh. James, what kind of nonsense are you pulling now? It's just a car. Is this really necessary? If you really like it that much, fine, I'll order one for you tomorrow. Happy now? No need, I said flatly. Your gift is too expensive. I'm afraid I can't afford to accept it. With that, I hung up. Mr. Chan, everything's ready, the procedures are complete, and the car is prepared for you. The sales manager jogged over, respectfully presenting the car keys and a gold-embossed VIP card with both hands. This is our highest-tier black and gold card. From now on, any purchase you make at any store under our group will receive the highest level of service. I took the keys and stood up. Thank you. When I sat in the driver's seat of the brand-new Phantom, breathing in the scent of fresh leather unique to a new car, my heart felt calmer than ever before. Daniella, the play you personally directed, it's time for it to end, and I will be the one who pulls the curtain down. Chapter 2. Daniella's company headquarters stood in the most prosperous financial district downtown. This building was something I had personally approved the purchase of back then. Now, it had become a symbol of Daniella's identity as a so-called business queen. The Phantom, worth over $13 million, was parked at the entrance of the building, like a silent and elegant beast, instantly drawing everyone's attention. The security guard recognized me, and he also recognized the old Toyota I'd been driving for 5 years. When he saw me step out of this top-tier luxury car, the expression on his face was more colorful than a painter's palette. Chan. Chan. Mr. Chan. I nodded at him and tossed him the car keys. Park it for me. Then I walked straight toward the entrance. Today was an important product launch event for Daniella's company. The media were everywhere, and distinguished guests filled the venue. I didn't have an invitation, but the greeters at the entrance knew who I was. The surprise and hesitation on their faces lasted no more than 3 seconds before turning into professional smiles. Mr. Chan, you're here. I walked directly into the hall. The launch event was already nearing its end. Daniella stood on stage, dressed in a perfectly tailored white suit, confident, elegant, speaking fluently. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. She was always like this, radiant, dazzling, forever the center of attention, and I had grown used to standing in the shadows, applauding for her. My gaze swept across the crowd, and I quickly found the young figure I was looking for. Calvin was wearing a sharp suit, a staff badge hanging on his chest, standing in the front row, gazing at Daniella on stage with undisguised infatuation. He looked like the most devout believer, worshipping his God. I slowly walked over and sat down in the empty seat beside him. Calvin seemed to sense something and turned his head. The moment he recognized my face, his pupils shrank violently, and all the color drained from his face. Chan. President Chan, he stammered, panic and fear flooding his eyes. I smiled at him, a smile with not the slightest warmth. Little Calvin, what a coincidence. My voice wasn't loud, but to him, it sounded like a thunderclap. His body began to tremble uncontrollably. His lips quivered, but he couldn't utter a single word. Relax. I patted his shoulder. The force wasn't strong, yet his entire body stiffened instantly. Young people having ambition is a good thing, but you have to walk the right path. Don't you agree? Cold sweat trickled down from Calvin's temples. He didn't dare look at me, his eyes glued to the tips of his shoes as if they held some priceless treasure. On stage, Daniella seemed to notice the disturbance. When her gaze met mine in midair, the smile on her face froze for a brief moment, but she quickly adjusted and continued her speech. Only now, her pace was noticeably faster than before. I withdrew my gaze from her, leaned closer to Calvin's ear, and whispered in a voice only the two of us could hear. How does that Porsche feel to drive? Calvin's body jolted violently, as if he'd been struck by electricity. He snapped his head up and stared at me in disbelief, terror written all over his face. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, still making a final, futile struggle. I smiled. You don't know. I took my phone out of my pocket and opened the photo Daniella had sent me, waving it in front of his eyes. Isn't this you in the picture? Personally sent to me, saying it was my wedding anniversary gift. Do you think I should thank her? Calvin's face was no longer just pale, it had turned an ashen gray, the color of death. He looked at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. Fear, like an invisible hand, clenched tightly around his throat. President Chan. I was wrong. He finally broke down, his voice trembling with sobs. I didn't mean to, it was Daniella. I raised a finger, cutting him off. It's too late to say any of that now. I stood up and straightened my suit. On stage, Daniella had finished her speech and was chatting with several important guests. Her eyes kept flicking in my direction, filled with unease and agitation. I raised my hand toward her and gave her a bright, dazzling smile. Then, under the astonished gazes of everyone present, I stepped forward, one step at a time, walking toward the main stage of the launch event. I was going to let everyone know who the real protagonist of this play truly was. Chapter 3. The moment I stepped onto the main stage, the entire venue fell into dead silence. All the cameras, all the flashing lights, all the eyes, every single one of them focused on me. Daniella's face turned deathly pale in an instant. She hurried toward me, trying to stop me, forcing a stiff smile onto her face. "Hubby, why are you here? You should have told me in advance." She reached out to hook her arm through mine, but I sidestepped casually, avoiding her touch. I took the microphone from the host and tested the sound. "Hello, everyone." My voice rang clearly through the speakers, reaching every corner of the hall. A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience. Everyone looked at me with curiosity and scrutiny. They knew Daniella, the rising queen of the business world, but they didn't know me. This sudden intruder she referred to as her husband. Cold sweat had already formed on Daniella's forehead. She grabbed my arm tightly, lowered her voice, and spoke in a near-pleading tone. "James, what are you trying to do? Don't cause a scene here. Let's go home and talk." "Okay. Go home." I looked at her and smiled. "Which home? The one you bought for Calvin? Or the one between us that exists in name only?" Daniella's body stiffened violently as she stared at me in disbelief. How do you know? If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place." I shook her hand off and walked to the center of the stage. Clearing my throat, I spoke loudly to the hundreds of guests and media reporters below. "First of all, my apologies for the interruption. My name is James Chan. I am Daniella's husband." The audience fell into complete silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting for what would come next. "Today is an important day for Daniella's company. It also happens to be the 5th anniversary of our marriage." I paused, my gaze sweeping across the audience before finally settling on Calvin, whose face had gone ghostly pale. Just moments ago, my wife, Ms. Daniella, gave me a very substantial wedding anniversary gift. I raised my phone and projected the photo of Calvin standing beside the Porsche onto the massive screen behind me. A Porsche worth $2-3 million. I really love it. Boom. The entire venue exploded. People craned their necks, staring at the glaring photo on the screen, then at me on stage, and finally at Daniella, whose face now looked like ashes. Flashbulbs went berserk. Shutter clicks echoed non-stop. Every reporter could smell a scandal of epic proportions. "Mr. Chan, who is the man in the photo? What is his relationship with Daniella? Daniella, is what your husband said true? Did you really use company funds to buy another man a car? Is this an extramarital affair? Are you getting a divorce?" The sharp questions were like knives, stabbing straight at Daniella. She stood there trembling, lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. The composure and elegance she prided herself on shattered completely in that moment. I ignored the reporters and continued speaking. "Many of you may not know that everything Daniella has today, including this company and this building, is the result of our joint efforts after marriage. To support her career, I willingly stepped into the background and handed the company entirely over to her management. I authorized all my patented technologies to the company free of charge. I believed my sacrifices would earn me a happy, complete family." My voice carried just the right amount of hoarseness and quiet sorrow, but I was wrong. My compromise and sacrifice didn't earn appreciation, it earned betrayal. She used the money we bled for together to financially support an intern 10 years younger than her. Then she turned around and accused me of being materialistic and obsessed with comparisons. At that, I let out a self-mocking laugh. "Before coming here, I called her and said I wanted to change cars. She told me a car was just transportation and that I shouldn't be vain. But the moment she turned around, she bought her pretty boy a sports car worth over $2 million. I want to ask everyone here, is that fair?" My words hit the crowd like a massive bomb. People looked at the barely standing Daniella with contempt and fury. Shameless. Disgusting. So the successful businesswoman image was fake. How revolting. Someone shouted first, and soon curses erupted from all directions. Daniella staggered, nearly unable to remain standing. Her assistant and several executives rushed onto the stage, shielding her as they tried to escort her away from this place of utter humiliation. I watched coldly as she was surrounded by people and dragged away in disgrace. I knew that from this day on, the business queen persona she had spent years cultivating would completely collapse. And this was only the beginning. I picked up the microphone again and announced my decision to all the media present. "I, James, will formally file for divorce from Ms. Daniella, and I will reclaim, through legal means, everything that rightfully belongs to me, including this company and all personal assets under my name. Thank you." With that, I set the microphone down. Under the relentless chase of countless flashing lights, I turned around, held my head high, and walked away from the place that once carried all my dreams and blood, sweat, and tears. Chapter 4. I had barely stepped out of the launch hall when Daniella's call came chasing after me. I didn't answer. I hung up, then blocked her number. Immediately after, an unfamiliar number rang. I swiped to answer. On the other end came Daniella's hysterical scream. "James, you lunatic, you ruined me. You destroyed everything I had." "I ruined you." I let out a cold laugh. "Daniella, put your hand on your conscience and ask yourself, who ruined whom?" "It was you. You were the one who personally pushed our relationship, our family, straight into the abyss." "James, what do you actually want?" Her voice trembled now, laced with fear. "Do you really have to make things this ugly? After all these years as husband and wife, don't you feel anything at all?" "Husband and wife?" I felt as if I'd just heard the biggest joke of my life. "When you held another man's arm and bought him a luxury car worth millions, where was that marital bond? When you used my money to keep a pretty boy and then turned around and scolded me for being materialistic, where was that marital bond?" "Daniella, drop the fake act. It makes me sick." "James," her voice suddenly shot up, filled with venom, "don't get smug. Do you think you've won? Let me tell you, this company is mine. I'm the legal representative. I'm the chairwoman. You're nothing. Even if we divorce, don't even think about taking a single cent from me. I'll make sure you leave with nothing." "Is that so?" I chuckled softly, my tone dripping with disdain. "Daniella, have you forgotten how this company came into existence? Whose name is on the core technology patents? Who wrote the business plan that secured the first round of angel investment? Before the company went public, who broke through all the technical barriers and shut up those arrogant Wall Street investors?" The line fell into a deathly silence. Every question I asked landed like a heavy hammer, smashing straight into her heart. These were the things she had deliberately forgotten, or rather, the history she had tried to erase entirely from my record of contributions. "Daniella, you overestimate yourself, and you underestimate me. Did you really think I handed the company over to you so you could do whatever you pleased? Let me tell you something. I can lift you to the heavens, and I can just as easily make you fall. Everything you have now, I can take back at any time." "No, that's impossible." Panic flooded her voice. "Those patents, those technologies, they were transferred to the company long ago. You don't have any evidence." "Evidence?" I laughed. "Daniella, did you forget the asset nominee agreement we signed back then? To put your mind at ease, I placed all my personal assets, including those patents and shares, under your name for holding purposes. The agreement clearly states that the actual owner of those assets is me. James, you were merely the nominal holder. That agreement exists in 2 copies. Mine has been locked in a safe deposit box at a Swiss bank this entire time. Tell me, if I submit that agreement to the court, who do you think the judge will believe?" "No." A scream of pure despair came from the other end of the line. "James, you schemed against me. You were planning this from the very beginning." "I schemed against you," I snorted coldly. "If you hadn't betrayed me first, that agreement would have rotted away in the vault forever. It was you who personally shattered the last bit of trust between us. James, you can't do this to me. We're husband and wife." Her voice softened, switching to emotional manipulation. "Please, hubby, I was wrong. I really was wrong. Give me one more chance. Okay, we won't divorce. We'll go back to how things were." "Too late." I cut her off mercilessly. "From the moment you handed the keys to that Porsche to another man, everything between us was over." With that, I gave her no chance to speak again and hung up. I got into the Phantom and started the engine. The massive black vehicle slid silently into the flow of traffic. In the rearview mirror, the headquarters of Daniella's company grew farther and farther away, until it became nothing more than a tiny black dot. Goodbye, my former lover. Goodbye, the 5 years of my youth that are now gone. From today onward, I will take back everything that belongs to me. Chapter 5. My legal team was astonishingly efficient. The very next day after I left the press conference, a rigorously worded lawyer's letter, along with a copy of the divorce lawsuit, was delivered straight to Daniella's desk. At the same time, I applied to the court for asset preservation. All bank accounts, shares, real estate under Daniella's name, as well as the publicly listed company she was so proud of, were completely frozen. This meant that she couldn't move a single cent. Once the news broke, the entire business world was shaken. The company's stock price plunged immediately. Within less than half an hour after the market opened, it hit the daily limit down. The board of directors descended into total chaos. My phone was almost blown up with calls. Some called to question me, some called to plead, some called to probe. Among them was my father-in-law, Daniella's father, Leonardo. "James, what exactly are you trying to do?" The moment I answered, Leonardo launched straight into accusations, his tone openly hostile. You've turned Danny's company into this mess. What good does that do for you? Couples fight at the head of the bed and make up at the foot of it. If there's a problem, can't you talk it out properly? Why take it all the way to court? I listened quietly to his scolding without interrupting. This father-in-law, who had once been relatively cordial to me, finally revealed his true face when his daughter and the family's interests were on the line. Dad, I said slowly after he finished, you should be asking your precious daughter what she's actually done. Isn't it just a young person making a small mistake? Leonardo said dismissively. A man should be broad-minded. Danny was just momentarily confused. Give her a way out, and this will all blow over. Momentarily confused. I laughed in anger. Using marital assets to buy a pretty boy a luxury car worth millions, that counts as momentary confusion. Dad, if it were me having an affair today, would you still be brushing it off so lightly? Leonardo was momentarily speechless, then flew into a rage out of embarrassment. How can you compare yourself to Danny? She's a woman, she's the public face of the company. By making such a scene, you've completely destroyed her reputation. Who's going to bear the company's losses? She brought it upon herself. I replied coldly. You. Leonardo was so furious he could barely speak. James, I'm warning you, don't push your luck. Don't forget who it was that promoted you from a lowly programmer to where you are today. Without our family, you'd be nothing. Those words stabbed straight into my heart like a thorn. Yes, in the eyes of the family, I would forever be that poor nobody who had to rely on their charity. No matter how much I had contributed to this company, to this family, their deep-rooted prejudice would never change. Dad, aren't you mistaken about something? My voice was cold as ice. It wasn't your family who elevated me. It was me who saved your family's textile factory from the brink of bankruptcy. It was my technology, developing an entirely new type of fabric, that brought the company back to life, that made today's Allcade Group possible. Without me, your family would still be scrambling over bank loans worth a few million. You're talking nonsense. Leonardo's voice clearly lacked conviction. Whether I was lying or not, he knew better than anyone. I'm not calling today to argue with you, I said flatly. I'm giving you two choices. First, let Daniella sign the divorce agreement and voluntarily give up all assets, leaving with nothing. For the sake of our past relationship, and yours, I can refrain from pursuing criminal charges against her for embezzlement. Second, we'll meet in court, and at that point, it won't just be a divorce. I'll also file criminal charges against her for abuse of power and illegal misappropriation of funds. What she'll be facing then won't just be public disgrace, but prison. You choose. With that, I hung up. I knew Leonardo would make the right choice, because no one understood better than he did that I always followed through on my words, and he understood even more clearly that once Daniella went to prison, the entire family would be finished. Chapter 6. Facts proved that I had still underestimated just how shameless the family could be. That very afternoon, Daniella contacted me through her lawyer, saying she was willing to talk. The meeting place was a private room in an upscale club. When I arrived, Daniella, her father Leonardo, and her mother Jennifer were already there. After only a few days, Daniella looked much more haggard. Her eye sockets were sunken, and the former radiance she once had was completely gone. The moment she saw me walk in, she stood up abruptly. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at me intensely. James, do you really have to be this heartless? I ignored her and sat down directly on the sofa opposite them. My legal team lined up behind me. My terms should already be very clear to you, I said bluntly. Leonardo kept a dark face and remained silent. It was my mother-in-law, Jennifer, who spoke first. She put on the mask of a kind, compassionate mother. Her voice trembled, her eyes reddened. James, I know Danny wronged you. She made a mistake, and we've already scolded her. For my sake and your father's, consider the 5 years you spent as husband and wife, and let her off this once. She's a woman, after all. Forcing her into a dead end, what good does that do for you? As she spoke, she wiped away tears, her performance full of apparent sincerity. If I hadn't known this family all too well, I might actually have been moved by her act. Mom, I said calmly, that's enough. Today, we're only talking terms, not feelings. Any feelings left were personally buried by your precious daughter. Jennifer's expression froze. The sorrow vanished instantly, replaced by sharpness and resentment. James, don't push your luck. What makes our Danny unworthy of you? If it weren't for our family, you'd still be hammering away at code in some tiny company. Everything you eat, wear, and use, what isn't given to you by the family. Now that you've grown wings, you want to bite back. You ungrateful wretch. Mom, Daniella shouted sharply, cutting her off. She knew that provoking me now would do them no good at all. James, Daniella took a deep breath, as if she had made some major decision. I agree to the divorce. I raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. But, she continued, changing her tone, The company is mine. I won't give it to you. I can compensate you, 50 million, and the downtown apartment will also be yours. This is the greatest concession I can make." At her words, the lawyers behind me couldn't help laughing out loud. I laughed too. "Daniella, are you joking with me? Allcade Group's current market value exceeds 10 billion, and you think 50 million is enough to send me away? Have you forgotten that 90% of the company's shares are under my name, only held by you on my behalf? Your so-called compensation is nothing more than trying to buy me off with my own money." Daniella's face darkened. "James, don't go too far. That nominee agreement is invalid. We're husband and wife, marital property should be split 50-50. Is that so?" I gestured to Lawyer Wong behind me. Lawyer Wong immediately understood. He took out a document from his briefcase and placed it on the table. "Ms. Koo, you may not be very familiar with the relevant legal provisions." Pushing his glasses up, Lawyer Wong spoke unhurriedly. "According to the law, one spouse's personal property does not become joint marital property simply due to the continuation of the marriage, unless otherwise agreed by both parties. And the asset nominee agreement you signed with Mr. Chan is precisely such a legally valid, otherwise agreed, arrangement. The agreement clearly states that all of Mr. Chan's premarital personal assets, including all patents and equity under his name, shall forever belong to Mr. Chan individually, independent of the marital relationship. In other words, Allcade Group's core assets have always been Mr. Chan's personal property from beginning to end. You were merely the nominal manager." That's impossible." Daniella grabbed the document, staring at the clauses as her entire body trembled. "This agreement is fake. You forged it," she screamed hysterically. "Ms. Koo, please mind your words," Lawyer Wong said coldly. "This agreement was signed under official notarization. It has full legal validity. If you dispute its authenticity, we can settle it in court. However, I must remind you, fabricating notarized documents is a serious crime." The last shred of hope in Daniella's eyes shattered. She collapsed onto the sofa, her face ashen. Leonardo's expression turned equally grim. He never imagined that the son-in-law he had always looked down on had left himself such a decisive safeguard from the very beginning. He thought he controlled everything, only to realize he had been nothing more than a pawn on someone else's chessboard. "James," Leonardo said hoarsely and weakly, "what exactly do you want?" "My terms have already been made perfectly clear." I stood up and looked down at them. "Leave with nothing, or rot in prison. I'll give you one day to think it over. By this time tomorrow, I expect to see a divorce agreement signed by Daniella. Otherwise, bear the consequences yourselves." With that, I turned and left the private room with my legal team. I knew it. This war, I had already won. Chapter 7. I thought Daniella would finally admit defeat. Reality once again refreshed my understanding of just how shameless she could be. The next day, I didn't receive a signed divorce agreement from her. Instead, I got an unexpected visitor. Calvin, the pretty boy Daniella had been keeping. He asked to meet me at a cafe. He looked utterly exhausted, as if he hadn't slept properly in days. "President Chan," he said when he saw me, standing up nervously, not even daring to raise his head. "Sit." I gestured calmly, lifting my coffee and taking a sip. "What do you want with me?" Calvin hesitated for a long time before pulling an envelope out of his bag and sliding it across the table. "President Chan, inside this is evidence of Daniella's embezzlement of company funds." I raised an eyebrow but didn't touch the envelope. "She didn't just buy me a car," he continued in a low voice. "She rented an apartment for me, gave me hundreds of thousands every month as allowance. She also used company money to buy her brother a villa, and replaced her parents' cars with luxury ones." His voice grew smaller and smaller, his head sinking lower and lower. I took photos of all the transfer records. I looked at him and suddenly found it laughable. "And what are you hoping to achieve by giving me this? Want me to let you off the hook? Or are you trying to squeeze one more payout from me?" Calvin's face flushed bright red. He lifted his head abruptly and hurried to explain. "No, that's not it, President Chan. That's not what I mean. I don't want to be used by her anymore. She came to me yesterday and asked me to commit perjury. She wanted me to testify that you were abusive, that you had a history of domestic violence, and that you were keeping other women outside the marriage. She wanted me to help her smear you. She said if I helped her, she'd give me another 5 million. I was scared. I don't want to go to prison." His voice trembled with tears. He looked pitiful and pathetic. This was the man Daniella had chosen. Spineless, opportunistic, completely lacking in integrity. When disaster struck, the first thing he thought of was selling out his benefactor to save himself. "President Chan, I really know I was wrong. Please be magnanimous and let me go. I'm willing to testify in court and expose everything Daniella's done." With a loud thud, he actually dropped to his knees. People in the cafe began casting strange looks in our direction. I frowned and stood up. "Get up. Don't embarrass yourself here." I pulled a wad of cash from my wallet and tossed it onto the table. I don't need this evidence. And whatever happened between you and Daniella has nothing to do with me. Take care of yourself." With that, I turned and walked away. I didn't need such despicable methods to win this lawsuit. I already had more than enough evidence to crush Daniella completely. As for Calvin, someone like him wasn't even worth a second glance. The moment I stepped out of the cafe, my phone rang. It was Lawyer Wong. "President Chan, there's new movement on Daniella's side," Wong said, his tone grave. "She submitted new evidence to the court, claiming that you subjected her to long-term psychological abuse and domestic violence during the marriage. She also obtained a diagnosis from a psychologist stating she suffers from severe depression. In addition, she's bought over some of the company's senior veterans and is preparing to jointly remove you from all positions at the board meeting." I stopped in my tracks. My gaze turned icy. "Good, very good. Daniella, you really won't give up until you see the coffin. If you insist on playing, then I'll play this to the very end." I hung up and immediately dialed another number. "Chris, it's me, James. I need a favor. Compile detailed records of our company's overseas account transactions over the past few years, along with my private email correspondence with those Wall Street big shots. Yes, the more detailed, the better. I want certain people to understand who the real owner of this company actually is." Chapter 8. The atmosphere in Alcade Group's emergency board meeting was so heavy it felt like water could drip from the air. Daniella sat in the chair at the head of the table. Her face was haggard, but her eyes were unnervingly resolute. There was even a hint of madness in them. Seated beside her were several senior executives of the company, veterans who had once fought alongside me to build the business from nothing. Now, they had become the weapons Daniella was using against me. When I walked into the conference room, every gaze converged on me. Some were filled with sympathy, some with schadenfreude, some with indifference, and some with guilt. "James, you still dare to show up?" Director Liu, an old subordinate of Leonardo's, was the first to jump out and attack. "You've turned the company into utter chaos and sent the stock price into free fall. How do you still have the face to be here?" I ignored him and walked straight to my seat. My seat was right next to Daniella's. "All right, since everyone is here, let's begin," Daniella said coldly, tapping the table. "This emergency board meeting has only one agenda item." She paused, her gaze sharp as a blade, stabbing straight at me. "To remove James from all positions within the company, and to request the board's approval of my divorce asset division proposal with James." The moment she finished speaking, Director Liu immediately echoed her. "I agree. James has serious moral issues and a chaotic private life. He has already caused grave damage to the company's reputation. He is unfit to hold any position in the company." "I agree as well." Another director raised his hand. One after another, 5 or 6 directors voiced their support. They were either Koo family loyalists or people Daniella Koo had bought off with interest. A smug smile crept onto Daniella's face. She looked at me with blatant provocation, as if to say, "So what if you have a nominee agreement? This company is under my control now." I said nothing, merely watching their performance in silence. Only after everyone who supported her had finished speaking did I slowly open my mouth. "Are you done?" My voice wasn't loud, but it instantly silenced the entire room. "If you're done, then it's my turn." I connected my laptop to the conference room projector. The big screen immediately filled with densely packed English emails. "Before you vote, directors, I'd like you to take a look at something." I opened the first email. This is a private email exchange from 3 years ago, between myself and Mr. Lopez, the Asia-Pacific president of Goldman Sachs, when the company was preparing for its NASDAQ listing. At the time, our IPO application was stalled due to issues with the shareholding structure. It was Mr. Lopez who used his connections to clear the obstacles for us, and the reason he was willing to help had nothing to do with Ms. Daniella's personal charm, nor with how bright Alcade Group's prospects looked. It was simply because I once helped him with a small favor during his most difficult time. I then opened the second email. This one is from 2 years ago, when our competitor, a European luxury conglomerate, the LVM Group, attempted a hostile takeover. I used an eco-friendly fabric technology patent that our company possessed and that they desperately needed, to force them to abandon the acquisition. And that patent was not owned by the company. It belongs to me personally. Next, I opened a third document, a complex diagram of capital flows. And this as well. Alcade Group's growth to its current scale has depended heavily on overseas capital. But those investors didn't choose us because Ms. Daniella's business plan was beautifully written. They chose us because the people controlling the capital are all my friends. They weren't investing in Alcade Group. They were investing in me, James. With every sentence I spoke, the faces of Daniella and the directors beside her grew paler. The conference room sank into a deathly silence. Everyone was stunned speechless by the series of nuclear bombs I had dropped. These were the company's deepest core secrets, contributions that Daniella had always tried to conceal and erase, achievements that belonged to me. She thought that as long as she forced me out, she could sit back and enjoy the fruits without worry. She was far too naive. Now, I stood up and swept my gaze across every director present. I'll give you all a chance to choose again. Choose a so-called queen who betrays trust, embezzles company funds, and will only drag the company into the abyss. Or choose me, the one who can bring real value and a real future to this company. The choice is yours. After speaking, I no longer looked at them. Instead, I turned my gaze toward Daniella, whose face had gone completely bloodless. Daniella, I said calmly, you've lost. Chapter 9. No, I haven't lost. Daniella suddenly sprang to her feet, screaming hysterically, looking completely unhinged. James, don't even think about it. This company is mine. No one can take it away. Like a gambler who had lost every last chip, her eyes were bloodshot as she glared at me. Directors, don't be fooled by him. Everything he said is fake. He forged it all. But this time, no one echoed her words. The directors who had sworn their loyalty to her just moments ago now shrank back like quails, avoiding my gaze, not daring to meet my eyes. People in the business world were the sharpest of all. They could see clearly who the real captain of the Alcade Group ship was. Without me, this ship could capsize at any moment. MS. Coup. Please calm down. Lawyer Wong stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried undeniable authority. The authenticity of these emails and documents can undergo verification by any third-party institution at any time. I believe Goldman Sachs and the LVM Group would also be more than willing to cooperate with an investigation. Lawyer Wong's words were the final straw that crushed Daniella. Her body went limp as she collapsed back into her chair, murmuring to herself, "It's over, it's all over. Now, let's vote again," I said calmly. This time, the result was beyond doubt. Aside from Daniella herself and Director Liu, who abstained, every other director cast their vote for me. I, James, regained absolute control of the Alcade Group with an overwhelming majority. After the meeting ended, the directors came forward one after another to congratulate me, as if they hadn't just tried to remove me moments ago. I shook hands with each of them, wearing a polite, courteous smile. I knew these people were unreliable, but for now, I needed them to stabilize the company. When everyone had left, only Daniella and I remained in the conference room. She sat there, vacant and dazed, like a soulless statue. I walked up to her and placed a divorce agreement, already signed with my name, on the table in front of her. Sign it. Daniella slowly raised her head and looked at me, her eyes filled with hatred and unwillingness. James, you're truly heartless. We're even, I replied coldly. Compared to you betraying me and trying to leave me with nothing, I think I've been more than merciful. I won't sign it. Daniella suddenly tore the agreement to shreds. I'd rather die than let you get your way. I'll drag this out forever. I'll make everyone know you're a heartless man who abandoned his wife. Suit yourself, I shrugged, completely unconcerned. But I should remind you, your good little brother, Calvin, went to the police this morning and turned himself in. He confessed everything, your embezzlement of company funds. You're keeping him on the side. He even provided extremely complete transfer records and evidence. So tell me, when do you think the police will come invite you in for a chat? Daniella's pupils shrank violently. No, impossible. How would he dare? Why wouldn't he? I sneered. Do you think he loved you? He only loved your money. Now that you can't even protect yourself, of course he's looking for a new way out. Oh, and one more thing. I've already instructed the company's legal department to formally report you to the police, accusing you of abuse of power and misappropriation of funds. The amount involved exceeds 50 million. I think that's enough to keep you behind bars for 10 years or more. Now tell me, do you still think you're qualified to drag this out with me? Daniella's body began to tremble violently, like a leaf in the wind. Fear washed over her like a tide, completely swallowing her whole. She looked at me, and for the first time, her eyes showed genuine pleading. Hubby, no, James. I was wrong. I really was wrong. With a thud, she dropped to her knees, clinging to my leg, crying uncontrollably. Please let me go. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want anything anymore, the company, the house, the money, you can have it all. I'm begging you, withdraw the charges. I looked down at the woman who had once stood high above everyone else, now reduced to dust beneath my feet. I felt nothing. If she had known this would happen, why do what she did in the first place? I kicked her away, took another identical divorce agreement out of my briefcase, and threw it in front of her. Sign it. This is your last chance. Chapter 10. In the end, Daniella signed the divorce agreement. Faced with complete public disgrace or prison, she chose the former. The day after the agreement was signed, we went to the civil affairs office to finalize the divorce. The moment I walked out of the building, divorce certificate in hand, my emotions were complicated. 5 years of marriage, just like that, it came to an end. There was no reluctance, no nostalgia, only the lightness that came with liberation. I withdrew the criminal charges against Daniella, considering it the last shred of dignity I could offer her, and the last courtesy to our dead relationship. But the truth about her embezzlement could not be buried forever. To appease furious shareholders, the board completely removed her from the company and demanded that she return all illegally obtained assets. Overnight, Daniella fell from a business queen worth tens of billions to an ordinary person drowning in debt. Her luxury homes and cars were all auctioned off to repay what she owed. Rumor had it that she moved back in with her parents, crying every day, refusing to leave the house. As for the intern named Calvin, although he avoided criminal punishment due to turning himself in and providing meritorious cooperation, his reputation was ruined throughout the entire industry. He could no longer find a decent job anywhere. Even the Porsche he once flaunted so proudly was listed on a second-hand car website and sold at a steep discount. When my assistant told me all this, I was in the middle of signing a new investment agreement. I had just acquired a well-known European designer brand and was preparing to introduce it domestically as Allcade Group's next major growth engine. President Chan, here's your coffee. A clear, pleasant voice sounded beside me. I looked up and saw a young, unfamiliar face. She was a new intern, about 20 years old, with a neat ponytail. Her eyes were large and bright, as if stars were hidden inside them. Thank you. I took the coffee and smiled at her. The girl's face flushed slightly, and she lowered her head shyly. President Chan, you're my idol. I've watched all your previous interviews. I think you're incredible. Really? I was a little surprised. You've seen my interviews? I rarely do them. Yes. She nodded vigorously. I watched the ones from your early startup days. Even when the company was still small, every word you said carried so much strength. You said that running a business is like being a person. You have to keep your feet on the ground and live up to your own conscience. I've always remembered that. I looked at her, at the pure, untainted admiration and respect in her eyes, and felt something stir in my heart. Once upon a time, this was exactly how Daniella used to look at me. Unfortunately, time, and endless desire, changed everything. What's your name? I asked. My name is Francesca, she replied. Francesca, I repeated softly. That's a beautiful name. Work hard, I encouraged her. If you have dreams, chase them. But always remember, never lose yourself just to take shortcuts. Francesca nodded, half understanding. As I watched her walk away, I suddenly felt that life seemed to have regained a hint of color. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Lawyer Wang. President Chan, Leonardo and his wife want to see you. I frowned and replied, no meeting. Between them and me, there was nothing left to say. However, a few minutes later, Lawyer Wang called. President Chan, they're downstairs at the company. They said if you don't see them, they'll kneel at the entrance and refuse to leave. I pinched the bridge of my nose, irritation rising. Let them come up. I wanted to see for myself what tricks this pair of shameless parents were planning next. Chapter 11. When Leonardo and Jennifer were brought into my office, both of them looked as if they had aged 10 years overnight. Most of Leonardo's hair had turned white, his back was hunched, and the authority he once carried was completely gone. Jennifer looked even worse. Her eye bags were swollen, her face deeply lined with wrinkles, exhaustion written all over her. The moment they saw me, Jennifer dropped to her knees with a thud. James, please save Danny. She cried uncontrollably, her sobs heart-wrenching. Leonardo's eyes reddened as well. His lips trembled as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. I sat behind my desk, looking at them coldly. I'm already divorced from her. Whatever happens to her has nothing to do with me. How can it have nothing to do with you? Jennifer crawled forward, trying to grab my leg, only to be stopped by my bodyguard. James, Danny, she's not going to make it. My heart sank. What do you mean? She has severe depression. She locked herself in her room, refusing to eat or drink, refusing to see anyone. Last night, she slit her wrists. If we hadn't found her in time, she'd already be gone. Jennifer wailed. The doctor said she has very serious psychological issues. If she stimulated again, she could. I fell silent, even though I no longer felt anything for Daniella. Hearing this still stirred something complicated inside me. After all, she was once the woman I had deeply loved. James, I know we were wrong before. Leonardo finally spoke, his voice hoarse and full of regret. We were blind, arrogant, and unfair to you. We failed you. We're not asking you to remarry Danny. We're only asking you to go see her, to talk to her. Right now, she listens to no one. Only you. Only your words might still reach her. Please, James, I'm begging you, as a father, save my daughter. As he spoke, this man well past middle age, once so proud and domineering in front of me, actually bent his knees. I sighed and stood up from my chair. Get up. I walked over and helped them up. I can go see her, but I'm only doing this as a final act of basic humanity. Don't harbor any unrealistic hopes. Yes, we understand. Leonardo and Jennifer nodded repeatedly, as if clinging to the last straw of hope. On the way to the hospital, my mood was heavy. I didn't know whether Daniella ending up like this was because of my so-called heartlessness, or because she had brought it upon herself. Perhaps it was both. In the hospital room, Daniella lay on the bed, her face pale as paper. Thick bandages were wrapped around her wrists. When she saw me enter, the emptiness in her eyes finally flickered with a trace of emotion. "Why are you here?" Her voice was so weak it felt like smoke. "Did you come to laugh at me?" I didn't answer. I pulled over a chair and sat beside her bed. "Why did you do this?" "Hey," Daniella laughed softly, the sound filled with desolation and despair. "I have nothing left. The company's gone. The money's gone. My reputation's gone. What's the point of living?" "James, you won. Are you satisfied now?" She stared at me, hatred burning in her eyes. "I never wanted to win against you." I looked at her calmly. "I only wanted to take back what belonged to me." "What belonged to you?" Daniella grew agitated. "What right do you have to say it was yours? Without me, without the Koo family, do you think you'd be where you are today? You're just an ungrateful ingrate." Listening to her stubborn words, I felt only sadness. Even now, she still hadn't recognized her own mistakes. She blamed every failure on my so-called betrayal, never once reflecting on what she herself had done. "Daniella," I stood up, unwilling to argue any further. "Just live. Not for anyone else, for yourself. You're still young. There's still a long road ahead. Even if you have nothing, as long as you're alive, there's still hope. If you die, then there truly will be nothing left." With that, I turned to leave. "Stop right there." Daniella suddenly sat up in bed, ripping out the 4-needle from her hand. She grabbed a fruit knife from the bedside table and pressed it against her own neck. "James, if you dare walk out that door today, I'll die right in front of you." Chapter 12. I stopped in my tracks and turned around, looking at her coldly. "You think you can threaten me with death?" A flicker of panic flashed through Daniella's eyes, but she quickly forced herself to calm down. The knife in her hand pressed even closer, the sharp blade slicing a shallow line of blood across her neck. "James, I'll ask you one last time, are you willing to remarry me?" She screamed hoarsely. "As long as you say yes, as long as we're still husband and wife, the company will still be ours. We can go back to how things were." "Okay." I looked at her deranged expression and felt nothing but absurdity. What did she think marriage was? A tool she could discard at will, and pick up again whenever she pleased. "Impossible," I replied firmly. "You." The last shred of hope in Daniella's eyes shattered. Despair and madness swallowed her whole. Fine. "James, you forced me into this, even as a ghost. I won't let you go." She screamed, tightening her grip on the knife and slashing down hard. "Don't." Leonardo and Jennifer cried out in despair from the doorway. At that critical moment, I moved. I lunged forward in a single stride. With lightning speed, I grabbed her wrist, twisted sharply. "Ah!" Daniella screamed in pain as the fruit knife clattered to the floor. I pressed her down onto the bed, seized the knife, and flung it far away. The entire sequence happened in the blink of an eye. By the time Leonardo and Jennifer, and the doctors and nurses alerted by the noise, rushed into the room, it was already over. Daniella lay on the bed like a pile of mud, sobbing uncontrollably. The medical staff hurriedly examined her wounds and injected a sedative. I stood to the side, watching coldly. "Mr. Chan, thank you. That was extremely dangerous," an older head nurse said to me, still shaken. I shook my head and said nothing. As I watched Daniella gradually calm under the effects of the sedative, I felt no pity at all. Someone who doesn't even cherish their own life isn't worthy of anyone's sympathy. I walked out of the ward, and Leonardo and Jennifer immediately surrounded me. "James, thank you for saving Danny." "No need." I cut them off. "This is the last time I deal with her affairs. From now on, whether she lives or dies has nothing to do with me. Take care of yourselves." With that, I left the hospital without looking back. I didn't want to have any further entanglement with this family. Back at the company, I locked myself in my office and smoked an entire pack of cigarettes. Daniella's madness felt like a thorn lodged in my heart. I began to reflect, when exactly did our marriage start heading toward destruction? Was it my early concessions and indulgence that gave her the confidence to act without restraint? Or was it her ever-expanding ambition and desire that caused her to lose herself? Perhaps we were never walking the same path to begin with. What I pursued was success in my career, the realization of my own value. What she pursued was fame, status, vanity, the thrill of being worshipped by the crowd. When my light outshone hers, when she felt that I had become an obstacle in her path forward, betrayal became inevitable. Ding! My phone chimed with a news notification. Business queen Daniella suspected of mental breakdown after marital turmoil. Brandishes knife in hospital and attempts self-harm. Situation once spiraled out of control. Below the headline were several blurry photos. Photos of me restraining Daniella. I frowned and immediately called the PR department. Suppress all negative news related to me. I don't want to see my name or my photo on any media platform. Yes, President Chan. After hanging up, I rubbed my aching temples. This farce, it was time for it to end completely. Chapter 13. Although the news of Daniella's failed suicide attempt was forcefully suppressed by me, it still caused quite a stir within a limited circle. For a time, rumors spread everywhere. Some said I was cold and heartless, that I had driven my ex-wife to the brink. Others said Daniella had only herself to blame, a classic example of a venomous woman reaping what she sowed. I paid no attention to any of it. The innocent will prove themselves innocent. The tainted will remain tainted. I poured all my energy into the company. I wanted to eliminate, as quickly as possible, the negative impact this storm had brought upon the business. Under my leadership, Allcade Group underwent a sweeping reform. I purged all Coup family loyalists and internal parasites, promoting a new generation of capable, driven young professionals. I personally led a team to Europe to carry out deep integration with the designer brand I had acquired. I also launched a new public welfare initiative, announcing that 10% of the company's profits over the next 3 years would be used to support girls in impoverished regions who had dropped out of school. After a series of decisive moves, Allcade Group's stock price finally stabilized and began to rebound. The company's public image gradually recovered from the mess of scandal and gossip, rebuilding a positive and responsible social reputation. 1 month later, Allcade Group's autumn product launch was held as scheduled. This time, I no longer stayed behind the scenes. I personally stepped onto the main stage, facing hundreds of media outlets and thousands of guests, laying out Allcade Group's future blueprint. Dressed in a deep blue tailored suit, I was confident, composed, and eloquent. Under the flashing lights, I felt as though I was seeing a new version of myself. The James who had once dimmed his own light for the sake of love was gone. Now, I was the chairman of Allcade Group, the helmsman determined to lead this company to the top of the world. The launch event was an unprecedented success. The next day, every major financial outlet featured Allcade Group and me on their front pages. Reborn from the ashes, James leads Allcade Group into a new era. From behind the scenes to center stage, the legendary rise of business tycoon James, the King returns. Allcade Group's market value soars by tens of billions overnight. I became the hottest figure in the business world. Outside my office, investors and potential partners lined up every day, all hoping to meet me. My life seemed to be back on track, perhaps even more brilliant than before. And yet, in the quiet of late nights, I occasionally felt a faint sense of loneliness. That evening, it was nearly midnight by the time I finished my work. When I walked out of the company building, I realized my driver had already gone home. Just as I was about to hail a cab, a white Beetle pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing Francesca's delicate face. "President Chan, you're still not heading home?" "Yeah, worked a bit late," I replied, slightly surprised. "What about you? It's so late, why haven't you gone home yet?" I was working late too." Francesca smiled shyly. "There's a proposal due tomorrow, and I wanted to polish it a bit more." "Get in, President Chan, I'll give you a ride home." I hesitated for a moment, then opened the door and got in. Inside the car was a faint gardenia scent, light and pleasant. "Where do you live?" I asked. "Near the company," Francesca replied while driving. "I'm renting a place." "Where's your hometown?" "A small town in Jiangnan. I came here to make my way after graduating from university." We chatted casually along the way. I realized that despite her young age, this girl had a mind of her own. She was passionate about her work and hopeful about the future. In her, I saw a kind of pure vitality I hadn't encountered in a long time. "President Chan, we're here." The car came to a stop downstairs at my apartment building. "Thank you for the ride," I said, unfastening my seatbelt. "You're welcome, President Chan." Francesca turned to look at me, her eyes sparkling in the night. "President Chan, are you alone now?" she asked softly, gathering her courage. I paused for a moment, then understood what she meant. I looked at her face, filled with expectation and nervousness, fell silent briefly, then shook my head. "For now, I don't plan to start another relationship." The light in Francesca's eyes dimmed. "Oh. I'm sorry, President Chan, I was too forward." "It's okay." I smiled gently. "You're a good girl. You deserve someone better." With that, I opened the door and stepped out, watching the white Beetle disappear into the night. I let out a quiet sigh. I wasn't a saint devoid of desire. Facing such a warm, genuine, and proactive girl, saying I felt nothing would be a lie. But I was afraid. Afraid of repeating the same mistakes. Afraid that my sincerity would once again be betrayed. Perhaps I truly needed a long time to heal the wounds Daniella had left behind. Chapter 14. Days passed one by one, and under my leadership, Allcade Group continued to thrive. Between Francesca and me, we maintained a tacit, appropriate distance. She was still the diligent, ambitious intern. Whenever she saw me, she respectfully addressed me as President Chan. I, in turn, would occasionally give her some guidance at work. We both knew our limits and never crossed the line again, until one day, when I accidentally overheard some rumors circulating inside the company. "Have you heard?" That Francesca is trying to seduce President Chan. Exactly. Just a newly arrived intern. Doesn't she know her place? A toad dreaming of eating swan meat. I heard she often uses overtime as an excuse to deliberately get close to President Chan. Last time, she even drove that beat-up beetle of hers to send President Chan home. How shameless. Doesn't she realize what kind of man President Chan is? As if he'd ever look at someone like her. I stood at the doorway of the pantry, my expression darkening instantly. I never expected that a single accidental interaction between Francesca and me would be twisted into something like this. What angered me even more was the malice and viciousness dripping from their words. I pushed the door open and walked in. Inside the pantry, the few female employees who had been gossiping froze the moment they saw me. Their faces turned deathly pale. Chan. President Chan. I ignored them, walked to the water dispenser, and poured myself a glass of water. Then I turned around, looked at them, and spoke coldly. Arcade Group does not need employees who spread rumors and stir up trouble. You few, go to the HR department tomorrow and process your resignations. With that, I turned and left, leaving them standing there, faces ashen. That afternoon, I called Francesca into my office. She looked a little nervous, clearly unsure why I had summoned her. Sit, I said, gesturing to the chair. Francesca, have you heard about some of the rumors going around the company? Her face flushed instantly. She lowered her head, her voice barely audible. I've heard a little. Why didn't you tell me? Francesca fell silent. Did you feel wronged? I asked. Her eyes reddened at once. She shook her head hard, but tears still slipped down. No. President Chan, I'm sorry. It's all because of me that I caused you trouble. Seeing how deeply wronged she clearly was, yet still thinking about me, something in the softest part of my heart was stirred. I walked over, took a tissue, and handed it to her. The one who should apologize is me. I shouldn't have dragged you into all this gossip and nonsense. Francesca took the tissue, wiped her tears, and looked up at me with confusion in her eyes. The employees who were speaking ill of you behind your back, I've already had them dismissed, I said, looking straight into her eyes, enunciating every word clearly. Francesca, I want you to know this, you didn't do anything wrong. Liking someone is not wrong. What's wrong are the people who use filthy minds to judge others. Francesca froze. She clearly hadn't expected me to say something like that. President Chan, would you be willing, I asked seriously, to give me a chance, and give yourself a chance as well? This time, I didn't want to run away anymore. I had stepped out of Daniella's shadow. I should have the courage to embrace a new life, and a new relationship. Francesca's eyes slowly widened, filled with disbelief and joy. She looked at me, her lips moving, but no words came out. Then she nodded hard, tears streaming down again. This time, they were tears of happiness. I smiled, reached out, and gently wiped the tears from the corner of her eyes. Don't cry anymore, I said softly. From now on, you have me. Chapter 15. Francesca and I became a couple. The news spread through the company very quickly. This time, no one dared to gossip anymore, because everyone knew that Francesca was the woman I, James, had chosen openly and without reservation. We lived like any ordinary couple, going to work together, leaving work together, eating meals together, watching movies together. Life with Francesca was simple, yet joyful. She wasn't like Daniella, filled with ambition and calculation. She was kind, pure, and deeply in love with life. She could be happy for an entire day just because I made her a simple breakfast. When I was exhausted, she would quietly brew a cup of hot tea for me. She would pull me along to browse small roadside shops, to eat spicy street noodles from humble stalls. With her, I rediscovered a long-lost passion for life. I began to understand that true happiness wasn't about how much wealth you had or how high your status was. It was about having someone willing to stay by your side, sharing the little moments of life, joy and sorrow alike. Half a year later, I proposed to Francesca. It was a sun-drenched afternoon, on the terrace of my apartment. There was no grand ceremony, no oversized diamond ring. I simply held a ring I had personally designed, simple in style, and knelt on one knee in front of her. Francesca, will you marry me? Francesca looked at me, crying uncontrollably, then nodded with all her strength. Our wedding was very low-key. We invited only our families and a few closest friends. At the wedding, Francesca wore a pure white gown, smiling like a child. Looking at her, I felt as though I possessed the entire world. After we got married, Francesca resigned from her job at Arcade Group. It wasn't my request, it was her own decision. She said she didn't want to live in my shadow. She wanted to pursue what she truly loved. Using our shared savings, she opened a small flower shop. Every day, she stayed among beautiful flowers, her smile blooming just as brightly. Sometimes I would think, what if, back then, I hadn't walked into that 4S dealership that afternoon? What if I had never discovered Daniella's betrayal? What would my life look like now? Perhaps I would still be that shadow husband, living beneath my wife's spotlight, enduring her coldness and criticism every day, guarding a marriage that existed in name only, slowly withering amid endless self-doubt and pain. It was Daniella's betrayal that forced me to face reality, and allowed me to find myself again. In a way, perhaps I should thank her. Thank her for giving me the chance to start over. Thank her for letting me meet Francesca, the true sunlight of my life. One day, while passing by a rehabilitation center, I accidentally saw a familiar figure. It was Daniella. She was dressed in a patient's gown, sitting in a wheelchair, pushed by a caregiver as she basked in the sun on the lawn. Most of her hair had turned white, her eyes were hollow, her face gaunt. She looked at least 20 years older than her actual age. She saw me too. Our gazes met briefly in the air. In her eyes, there was no hatred, no madness, only a dead, stagnant calm. Neither of us spoke. We simply looked at each other for a moment. Then I nodded slightly at her. She moved the corner of her lips, as if responding. I turned around and continued walking forward. Behind me lay the past that belonged to her and me, a past we could never return to. Ahead of me was Francesca, and our future, filled with hope. The sunlight was just right. The breeze was gentle. Everything was exactly as it was meant to be.